The gardenias were too sweet. That's what I remember most about that day. Not the way my hands shook as I adjusted my boutonniere for the third time. Not the string quartet playing something soft and hopeful in the corner. Not even the faces of our guests, his college friends, my family, the coworkers that had become like siblings to us. No, I remember the gardenias. White and waxy and so goddamn sweet the smell made my stomach turn. Or maybe that was just the panic. I stood at the altar. Well, not an altar, really. We'd chosen a garden ceremony. Something intimate. Something us. Fairy lights strung between the trees, even though it was 2 in the afternoon. He'd laughed when I suggested it. "You and your aesthetics," he'd said, kissing my temple. "Fine, but I draw the line at releasing doves." I'd kissed him back. Deal. God, I was so stupid. The officiant, a kind-faced woman we'd found on a wedding forum, checked her watch for the 4th time. I saw it in my peripheral vision, tried to ignore it, tried to smile at my mother in the front row, but her face had already shifted from excitement to concern. "He's just late," I told myself. "Traffic. He probably stopped to fix his tie. You know how he is." But I didn't know. That was the problem. I'd thought I knew everything about him. The way he took his coffee. Black, 2 sugars, but only if it was already brewed. He was too impatient to wait. The way he'd trace absent patterns on my back when we watched TV. The way he'd look at me sometimes, like I was the only real thing in his world. I'd thought I knew him. My best man, Marcus, who'd known me since undergrad, leaned in close. "Do you want me to call him?" "No," I said, too quickly. "No, he'll be here." Marcus didn't argue, just squeezed my shoulder and stepped back. The guests were whispering now. I could feel it more than hear it. That particular frequency of concern that sounds like static in your chest. My mother's friend leaned over to say something to her. My mother's face crumpled. That's when my phone buzzed. I shouldn't have looked. I should have waited, should have held on to hope for just a few more seconds. But I looked. One new message. From him. From Ethan. From the man who was supposed to be standing beside me in 7 minutes, promising me forever. My hands were steady as I opened it. Isn't that strange? In that moment, the worst moment of my life, my hands didn't shake at all. The message was short. "I'm sorry. I can't do this. The VP position in New York came through. They need me to start Monday. This is my shot. You understand, right? You always understood me. I'm sorry." I read it twice. Then I read it again. "You understand, right?" The phone felt very heavy suddenly. Or maybe I felt very light, like I might just drift up into the sky with the gardenias and the fairy lights and disappear entirely. "Hey," Marcus again, his voice careful. "What's—" I handed him the phone. I watched his face change, watched the color drain, watched his jaw clench so hard I heard his teeth click together. "That fucking—" "Don't." My voice sounded strange, distant. "Just tell them." "Tell them what?" "That there's not going to be a wedding." I don't remember much after that. I remember Marcus talking to the officiant. I remember the music stopping. I remember the sound my mother made. Not quite a sob, not quite a gasp. Something worse. I remember walking back down the aisle. Not running, walking. 1 foot in front of the other while 150 people watched me dissolve. I remember getting into Marcus's car. He drove me home. Not to the apartment Ethan and I shared, but to his place. Poured me a drink I didn't taste. Told me I could stay as long as I needed. I remember lying on his couch staring at the ceiling and feeling absolutely nothing. The VP position in New York. He'd mentioned it once, maybe twice. A pipe dream, he'd called it. The kind of opportunity that didn't come around for people like us, mid-level corporate climbers still paying off student loans. Apparently, it had come around for him. And apparently, I hadn't been part of the equation. You understand, right? No, I didn't fucking understand. I didn't understand how you could say you loved someone and then abandon them at the altar via text message. I didn't understand how a job, any job, could be worth that kind of betrayal. I didn't understand how the man who cried when I proposed could walk away without even having the decency to do it to my face. I didn't understand. But I learned. The thing about rock bottom is, it's solid. You can't fall any further. And once you stop falling, you can start building. I gave myself 1 week.
1 week to feel sorry for myself, to drink too much and sleep too little and let Marcus spoon-feed me takeout while I stared blankly at reality TV. On day 8, I got up. I started running. 6 a.m. every morning until my lungs burned and my legs screamed, and I couldn't think about anything except the next step. I threw myself into my work. I was a project manager at a mid-sized tech firm. Decent job, decent pay, decent future. I had been coasting, content. I stopped coasting. I stayed late, came in early, took on projects no one else wanted, learned everything I could about the business side, the client side, the development side. I made myself indispensable. And when our CEO announced he was looking for someone to head up a new venture, a spin-off startup focused on AI-driven project management tools, I walked into his office and told him it should be me. He laughed, not unkindly. "You've got guts, I'll give you that, but you don't have the experience." "Then I'll get it," I said. "Give me 6 months. If I haven't proven myself, you can give it to someone else." He studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. 4 months, and you're working under Angela Chen. If she signs off, the job's yours." Angela Chen was a legend, brilliant, ruthless, and notoriously difficult to impress. I impressed her in 3. The startup became my life. We called it Vantage, a platform that streamlined project workflows using predictive AI. It sounded simple. It wasn't, but I'd stopped caring about simple. I recruited a team of hungry, brilliant misfits. We worked 100-hour weeks, slept in the office, lived on coffee and spite. 18 months later, we got acquired by a Fortune 500 company for an 8-figure sum. I could have walked away then, retired at 32. But I didn't. I took the buyout money and started my own firm, Meridian Capital, a venture fund focused on early-stage tech companies, the kind of place that could make or break careers. The kind of place that attracted desperate, ambitious people looking for their big break. People like the man I used to be. And, as it turned out, people like Ethan. 5 years. That's how long it took for me to stop thinking about him every day. I didn't date, didn't have time, didn't have interest. A few people tried. Investors, entrepreneurs, the occasional attractive stranger at a networking event. I smiled politely and declined. I wasn't broken. I just didn't see the point. I'd loved once, fully, recklessly, stupidly. I'd stood at an altar covered in gardenias and waited for a man who never came. I wouldn't make that mistake again. I became someone else instead. Someone harder, sharper, someone who didn't flinch at difficult conversations or bad news or the look in people's eyes when I told them no. I became successful. And then, on a Tuesday in March, I saw his name. It was buried in a stack of resumes my assistant had forwarded. We were hiring for a senior strategist role, someone to help our portfolio companies scale. High pressure, high visibility, high reward. I almost missed it. Ethan Carver, strategic growth consultant, former VP of business development. I stared at the name for a full minute. Then I opened the file. His photo was professional, polished. He'd cut his hair shorter. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. He looked tired. I scrolled through his work history. The VP position in New York, 2 years, then the company folded. A lateral move to another firm, then another. A gap of 6 months. A consulting gig. Another gap. He was floundering. The realization should have felt good. It should have felt like justice. Instead, I felt nothing. Just a cold, creeping curiosity. I picked up my phone, called my assistant. "The senior strategist role," I said. "Schedule interviews for the top 5 candidates." "Of course. Any particular order?" I glanced at Ethan's resume again. "Ethan Carver," I said. "I'll take that one myself." The day of the interview, I arrived early. I sat in the conference room, glass walls, minimalist furniture, a view of the city skyline, and waited. My assistant knocked once. "Mr. Carver is here." "Send him in." I didn't stand, didn't smile, just folded my hands on the table and watched the door. It opened, and there he was. Ethan Carver, the man who'd left me at the altar, the man who chose a job over a life with me, the man I'd spent 5 years trying to forget. He froze in the doorway. I watched the color drain from his face, watched his eyes go wide, watched his mouth open, then close, then open again. "Please," I said, my voice calm and cold and perfectly controlled. "Sit down." He didn't move. I leaned back in my chair and met his eyes. "Let's talk about your qualifications." He still hadn't sat down. I let the silence stretch, watched him stand there in the doorway, briefcase clutched in one hand, the other hovering uncertainly at his side. He looked like a man who'd just walked into the wrong room and was trying to calculate his exit strategy. "Good. Mr. Carver," I said again, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Please." He moved then, mechanical, like his body was operating on autopilot while his brain tried to catch up. He set his briefcase down too carefully, pulled out the chair too slowly, and lowered himself into it like he was afraid it might collapse beneath him. His eyes never left my face. I could see him trying to reconcile it. The man across from him, tailored Tom Ford suit, Swiss watch, the kind of quiet confidence that comes from having enough money to never think about money, with whatever memory he had of me. He was still searching for the connection. I could see it in the way his brows drew together, the slight tilt of his head. He didn't recognize me. Not yet. The realization was delicious. I'd changed, of course. 5 years of 16-hour days and relentless ambition had a way of reshaping a person. I'd lost the softness I used to carry, not just physically, though the running had helped with that, but in my face, my eyes, the way I held myself. The boy he'd left at the altar had been gentle, hopeful, a little too eager to please. That boy was gone. "Thank you for coming in," I said, opening the folder in front of me, his resume. I'd read it 4 times already, but I made a show of scanning it again. "Your experience is interesting." "Thank you," he said. His voice was rough, uncertain. "I'm excited about the opportunity." "Are you?" He blinked. Yes, of course. Meridian Capital has an incredible reputation. The work you do with early-stage companies is really... Tell me about New York." The words came out sharp, clinical. I didn't look up from the resume. "I'm sorry?" "Your VP position. You spent 2 years there. Then the company folded." I glanced up, met his eyes. "What happened?" He shifted in his seat. "It was a market correction issue. The leadership made some aggressive expansion choices that didn't pan out. It wasn't your fault?" "I didn't say that." "But you implied it." I leaned back, folded my hands. "You were VP of Business Development. Expansion falls under your purview, doesn't it?" His jaw tightened. "I advised against several of those decisions, but I wasn't the final decision maker." "No, you weren't. Which is why you're here, I suppose, looking for a role where you can actually make an impact." "Yes." He nodded, too eager. "Exactly. I've learned a lot from that experience. I know what works and what doesn't. I can bring that knowledge to..." "You took the job on a Monday," I said. He stopped mid-sentence. "What?" "The VP position. You started on a Monday." I tilted my head, watching him. "That must have been quite a rush. Packing up your life, moving to a new city, starting a new role all in the span of a weekend?" Something flickered across his face. Confusion, then, slowly, the first spark of recognition. "How did you—" I didn't answer, just held his gaze. The silence in the room felt thick enough to drown in. "Let's talk about your leadership style," I said, as if I hadn't just watched his world tilt on its axis. "How do you handle high-pressure situations, time-sensitive decisions?" He opened his mouth, closed it. His hands had started to shake, just slightly, but I noticed. I always noticed. He cleared his throat, tried again. "I believe in assessing all available information and making calculated decisions based on..." "What if you don't have time?" I interrupted. "What if you have to choose between 2 equally important priorities? Say, a personal commitment and a professional opportunity. How do you decide?" His face had gone pale. He swallowed. "I would weigh the long-term impact of each choice." "Would you?" I leaned forward slightly.
Or would you just choose whichever one felt immediately rewarding? I don't. He stopped, started again. I think that's an oversimplification. Is it? I picked up my pen, clicked it. Once, twice. It was a nervous habit I'd developed during my first year running Vantage. Ethan used to tease me about it. You're going to wear out the spring, he'd said, plucking the pen from my hand and kissing my knuckles. Click, click. Ethan's eyes dropped to the pen, then back at my face. I watched the color drain even further. Tell me about your greatest professional regret, I said softly. My what? Your greatest regret, career-wise. What's the one decision you wish you could take back? He was staring at me now, really staring, and I could see it happening, the pieces clicking into place, the shape of my jaw, the set of my shoulders, the way I held my pen. You don't, his voice cracked. I don't think that's relevant to humor me. The air between us felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. He opened his mouth, closed it. His hands were gripping the armrests of his chair. I made a choice once, he said finally, quietly, that I thought was right at the time, but I didn't consider. I didn't think about the full cost. The full cost, I repeated. Interesting phrase. What did it cost you? Everything. The word hung between us like smoke. I set down my pen. Mr. Carver, I said, and I watched him flinch at the formality, at the distance. Do you recognize me? He stood up.
Not quickly. More like his body had simply decided it couldn't stay sitting anymore. He backed up a step, then another, his briefcase forgotten on the floor. No, he whispered. No, you can't be. Sit down. This isn't. Sit down. My voice didn't rise, didn't need to. There was enough ice in those two words to freeze the room. He sat. His hands were shaking visibly now. His breathing had gone shallow. Say my name, I said. I can't. Say it. Please, say my name. Julian. It came out broken, desperate. Oh, God. Julian, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know you worked here. I didn't know you were... What? Successful? I smiled. It didn't reach my eyes. Alive? Still capable of functioning after you gutted me in front of 150 people? I'm sorry. He was leaning forward now, hands pressed flat on the table. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know I can't. You're right, I cut him off. It doesn't mean anything. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city sprawling beneath us, all glass and steel and ambition. My city now. My kingdom. Let me tell you what's going to happen, I said, not turning around. You're going to sit there. You're going to answer my questions, and you're going to do it professionally because this is still an interview, Mr. Carver. Julian, please, I can't. Can't? I spun around. That's interesting. You couldn't make it to our wedding either. You couldn't pick up the phone. You couldn't have the basic human decency to end things face to face. But you could text me from the airport. You could start your new job 72 hours later. You could move on like I was just, what, a phase? An inconvenience? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I took a step toward him, then another. Explain it to me, because I've spent 5 years trying to understand how someone who claimed to love me could do what you did. I was terrified. The words burst out of him, raw, ragged. I was terrified and stupid, and I convinced myself that if I wasn't successful, if I didn't make something of myself, you'd realize you'd made a mistake, that you'd leave me eventually. So you left first. Yes. He looked up at me, and his eyes were wet. Yes, and I've regretted it every single day since. I stared at him. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to walk out, to end this, to tell him to get out of my building and never come back. But I didn't.
because there was something else beneath the rage, something I'd been ignoring for 5 years. I wanted answers, and I wanted him to hurt the way I hurt. I returned to my seat, picked up my pen again. Your resume says you're good at strategic scaling. Our portfolio companies need someone who can help them grow without losing their core identity, someone who understands the balance between ambition and stability. He was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Are you actually? Are we still doing the interview? Of course. I met his eyes. Did you think I brought you here just to yell at you? That would be unprofessional. I don't understand. You want a job. I have a job. Whether or not you get it depends on whether you can convince me you're qualified. So, convince me. You can't be serious. I'm always serious, Mr. Carver. You should know that about me. I paused. Oh, wait. You don't know me at all anymore, do you? He looked like he might be sick. I can't work for you, he said hoarsely. Why not? Because of what I did. Because every time you look at me, What I'll do with my feelings is my concern. What you need to worry about is whether you're capable of doing the job. Are you? He stared at me for a long, long moment, and then, God help him, he nodded. Yes, he said quietly. I am. Good. I made a note on his resume. Your resume says you're good at strategic scaling. Our portfolio companies need someone who can help them grow without losing their core identity, someone who understands the balance between ambition and stability. We talked for another 40 minutes.
He answered my questions. I took notes. We discussed case studies and growth metrics and market positioning. His hands eventually stopped shaking. His voice steadied. He was good. Damn it, he was good. That made it worse somehow. When my assistant knocked to tell me my next meeting was in 10 minutes, I closed his file and stood. Ethan stood too, hesitant. Thank you for your time, I said, extended my hand. He looked at it like it might burn him, but he shook it. His hand was warm, familiar. For half a second, I remembered what it felt like to hold it, to trust it. I let go. We'll be in touch, I said. Julian? Mr. Hayes, I corrected. In this building, it's Mr. Hayes. He swallowed hard, nodded. I watched him gather his briefcase, watched him walk to the door, watched him pause with his hand on the handle. I really am sorry, he said without turning around. I didn't respond. He left. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood there for a long time, staring at the space where he'd been. Then I picked up my phone and called my assistant. The Carver interview, I said. Send him an offer letter. Sir? You heard me. I hung up before she could ask questions, because Ethan was right about one thing. I did understand him. I understood that some people needed to be broken before they could be rebuilt, and I was going to enjoy every minute of breaking him. The offer letter was generous. On paper. Senior strategist, 6-figure salary, full benefits, equity options after the first year. But buried in the fine print, the parts most people skimmed over, were the terms that mattered. Direct report to CEO, performance reviews conducted monthly, probationary period, 6 months, terminable without cause. Required availability, evenings and weekends as needed. I'd written it myself. My lawyer had raised an eyebrow. This is aggressive. It's thorough, I corrected. It's a leash. He can always say no. But we both knew he wouldn't. Ethan's acceptance email came through at 11:47 p.m. the same day I sent the offer. 3 sentences. Professional, grateful. No mention of us. Good. His first day was a Monday. I didn't greet him personally. That would have been too much, too deliberate. Instead, I had my assistant show him to his office, if you could call it that. More like a glorified closet. Interior wall, no windows. Just enough room for a desk and a filing cabinet. Every other senior-level employee had corner offices with views. I wondered if he'd notice. I wondered if he'd complain. He didn't. I watched him on the security feeds, a habit I'd developed after our first major investor tried to plant a spy in the office. He unpacked his laptop, arranged his pens in a neat line, and stared at the blank wall for a full 2 minutes before pulling up his email. His shoulders were tense, curved inward, like he was trying to make himself smaller. Good, I thought, then hated myself for thinking it. I didn't speak to him for the first 3 days. It wasn't avoidance. I was busy. Board meetings, investor calls, a keynote speech at a tech conference in Boston. Meridian Capital didn't run itself. But I was also curious. I wanted to see how long it would take before he cracked, before he came to me, demanded an explanation, asked what the hell I was playing at. He didn't. Instead, he worked. My COO reported that Ethan had submitted a comprehensive analysis of our 3 most struggling portfolio companies within 48 hours. Detailed recommendations, market comparisons, projections that were, annoyingly, almost identical to my own assessments. "She's good," she said, dropping the report on my desk. "Where'd you find him?" "Resume pile," I said without looking up. "Well, keep him. We need more people who actually give a damn." I flipped through the report after she left. It was thorough, meticulous, the kind of work that required long hours and genuine care. The margins were filled with tiny notes in his handwriting, cramped, anxious, question marks and second guesses. He's drowning, I realized, and I'd thrown him the anchor. Thursday evening, I called him into my office. It was almost 7. Most of the staff had gone home. I could see him through the glass walls of his office, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, staring at his screen like it held the secrets of the universe. I sent the summons via Slack, watched him jump slightly when the notification popped up. My office, now. He arrived 3 minutes later, knocked twice even though the door was open. "You wanted to see me?" "Sit." He sat. I let the silence build while I finished the email I was typing, let him sweat. When I finally looked up, his hands were clasped in his lap, knuckles white.
"Your analysis of the portfolio companies," I said. "It's solid work." Something flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or relief. "Thank you. I wanted to, but it's incomplete." The hope died. "I don't understand. I covered all the key metrics, the competitive landscape, You covered the symptoms." I leaned forward. "I need you to dig deeper. Find the root causes. Talk to the founders. Spend time in their offices. Understand their culture, their team dynamics, their why. Numbers only tell half the story." "That will take time." "Yes." I checked my watch. "Which is why you're starting tonight. I've arranged meetings with all 3 CEOs. First one is at 8. He blinked. "Tonight? As in an hour from now? Is that a problem?" I watched him process it, watched him realize he had no good answer. If he said yes, he looked uncommitted. If he said no, he'd be working until midnight. "No," he said finally. "No problem." "Good. I'll be joining you." His head snapped up. "You what?" "These are my companies, Mr. Carver, my investments. I like to be personally involved." I stood, buttoned my jacket. "Unless you'd prefer to handle it alone." No. He scrambled to his feet. "I didn't expect." "I know." I walked past him toward the door. "You never do." The meetings were brutal. Not because the CEOs were difficult. They were all young, hungry founders who respected my opinion and desperately wanted my continued support. No, they were brutal because I made them that way. Every question Ethan asked, I followed up with a harder one. Every insight he offered, I pushed him to go deeper. I watched him sweat through his shirt, watched him gulp water like a man dying of thirst, watched him take notes so frantically his hand cramped. And through it all, I remained perfectly calm, perfectly collected, a glacier in a Tom Ford suit. By the third meeting, a struggling AI startup in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, Ethan looked like he might pass out. "You okay?" the founder asked him, genuine concern in her voice. "You need a break? Some coffee?" "He's fine," I answered before Ethan could. "Aren't you, Mr. Carver?" "Yes." His voice was hoarse. "I'm fine." The founder glanced between us, clearly sensing something off, but didn't push. We wrapped at 11:30 p.m. The car ride back to the office was silent. My driver navigated the late-night traffic while Ethan and I sat in the back seat, carefully maintaining the 18 inches of space between us. I could feel him wanting to speak, could feel the words building up inside him like pressure in a sealed container. I checked my email, ignored him. Why are you doing this? I looked up. His face was turned toward the window, reflection ghostly in the glass. Doing what? This! He gestured vaguely. Hiring me, working me like this. You could have just rejected my application. You could have told me to go to hell. But instead, you're, what, torturing me? I'm ensuring you're worth the investment. Bullshit. The word hung in the air. I set down my phone, turned to look at him fully. Excuse me? You heard me. He finally met my eyes. This isn't about my qualifications. This is about what? About you abandoning me at our wedding? About you choosing a job you couldn't even keep over a life with me? About the fact that you couldn't even bother to call? I know. His voice cracked. I know what I did. You think I don't live with it? You think I don't see your face every time I close my eyes? That moment at the altar when you realized I wasn't coming? You weren't there. How would you know what that moment looked like? Because I've imagined it 1,000 times, 1,000 different ways. He was shaking now, actually shaking. I was a coward. I was selfish and stupid, and I hurt you in a way that's unforgivable. I know that. And yet you took the job anyway. Because I'm still a coward. He laughed, bitter, broken. Because I'm drowning, Julian. I've been drowning for 5 years. And when I saw your company, saw the opportunity, I thought, God, I don't know what I thought. That maybe, if I could just be near you again, I could what? Apologize enough to make it better? Suffer enough to earn forgiveness? Maybe. He looked at me, really looked at me. Would it help if I suffered? The question caught me off guard. Would it? I'd spent 5 years building myself into someone untouchable, someone who didn't need forgiveness or closure or explanations, someone who'd moved on. But sitting here, in this car, looking at the man who'd broken me? Yes, something dark inside me whispered. Yes, it would. Get out, I said. What? We're at the office. Get out. Go home. Be back at 7 tomorrow. We have a presentation to prepare for the board. Julian. Mr. Hayes. He flinched, but he got out. I watched him walk toward the subway entrance, shoulders hunched against the cold. And I felt absolutely nothing. Liar, my mind whispered. He was at his desk at 6:45 the next morning. I know because I was there at 6:30. I'd stopped sleeping well around year 3 of building Meridian. 4 hours a night, maybe 5 if I was lucky. The rest of the time I worked because work didn't ask questions. Work didn't leave. Work was safe. I made coffee in the executive kitchen, the good stuff, imported from a small roaster in Seattle, and stood at the window watching the city wake up. The sunrise painted everything gold. I remembered another sunrise, the morning after he proposed. We'd stayed up all night, too excited to sleep, planning everything. The venue, the flowers, the vows we'd write to each other. I'm going to promise you forever, he'd said, kissing my temple. And I'm going to mean it. I poured the coffee down the sink. At 7:15, my assistant buzzed me. Mr. Carter is here for the board prep. Send him in. He looked worse than yesterday, exhausted, wrung out, but he'd shaved, pressed his shirt, showed up. Part of me hated that I noticed. Coffee? I offered. He looked at me like I'd offered him poison. Black, 2 sugars, I said. Unless that's changed. His face went white. I poured it anyway, set it in front of him. He didn't touch it. The board meets at 9, I said, pulling up the presentation on my screen. We have 90 minutes to make sure you don't embarrass yourself, or me. Why do you even want me there? Because you did the analysis. You should present it. That's not why. I looked at him. Then tell me why, Ethan, since you seem to know me so well. He stared at the coffee, at his hands, at everything except me. You want me to fail, he said quietly. In front of people who matter, you want them to see me struggle. I wasn't wrong, but I wasn't completely right either. I want you to prove you're worth the risk. Everything else is just noise. Is it? He finally looked up. Or is this just elaborate revenge? I could have lied, should have lied. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Does it matter?
The look on his face, devastation mixed with resignation, should have felt like victory. It didn't. It felt like standing at an altar waiting for someone who was never going to come. I cleared my throat, turned back to the screen. "We're wasting time. Let's go through your slides." He picked up the coffee, drank it like penance, and we worked. The deal fell through on a Wednesday. 3 months of negotiations, hundreds of hours of work, a Series B funding round that would have saved one of our most promising portfolio companies, a healthcare AI startup that was this close to FDA approval. Gone. The lead investor got cold feet, pulled out at the 11th hour, and without them, the other investors scattered like roaches when you turn on the lights. I got the call at 4:47 p.m. By 5:15, I'd exhausted every backup option, every favor I could call in, every alternative funding source. Nothing. The company would have to lay off half its staff, maybe fold entirely within 6 months. 30 jobs, gone. Years of research, wasted. And it was my fault. I'd pushed too hard on valuation, been too confident in our position, too arrogant to see the warning signs. I sat at my desk, staring at the city skyline, and felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in 5 years. Failure. The office had emptied by 7. I should have gone home, should have poured myself something expensive and tried to forget that I'd just watched millions of dollars and dozens of lives circle the drain. Instead, I just sat there. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. Buzzed again, still ignored it. On the third buzz, I finally looked. "Still here? Do you need anything?" EC. Ethan. Of course he was still here. The man worked like he was trying to outrun his own shadow. 12, 14-hour days, weekends in the office. I'd started to wonder if he even had an apartment or if he just slept under his desk. I should have told him to go home. Instead, I typed, "My office." He appeared in my doorway 5 minutes later, still in his button-down but with his tie gone and his sleeves rolled up. There were dark circles under his eyes that matched my own. "You heard about Mediscan. Not a question." "Yeah." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I'm sorry."
Don't be. It's not your fault. I know, but I'm still sorry. He stood there, uncertain, like he didn't know if he was supposed to leave or stay silent. I gestured to the chair across from me. He sat. We didn't say anything for a long moment, just existed in the same space, both of us carrying the weight of a very bad day. "You did everything right," he said finally. "The valuation was fair, the terms were reasonable. Thompson just got spooked." "Thompson is an idiot." "Yes," the corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, "but he's an idiot with a lot of money." "Had," I corrected, "had a lot of money. He's about to watch 3 of his other investments tank because everyone's going to remember he's unreliable." Cold comfort. It's all I've got right now. Another silence, this one heavier. Outside, the sky had gone dark. Rain started to fall, not the gentle kind, but the angry, punishing kind that made you grateful to be indoors. "Do you want to be alone?" Ethan asked quietly. I should have said yes. "No," I said instead. He stayed. We didn't talk about the deal, didn't talk about work at all. Instead, we sat there as the rain battered the windows and the city blurred into watercolor smears of light. "I used to love storms," Ethan said eventually. He was standing at the window now, hands in his pockets, watching the rain. "When I was a kid, my mom hated them. She'd hide in the basement with candles and a radio, convinced we were all going to die. But I thought they were beautiful," I finished. He glanced back at me, surprised. "You told me once," I said, "that the first time you felt truly alive was during a thunderstorm when you were 9. You snuck out onto your porch and just stood there, getting soaked while lightning split the sky." His expression did something complicated. "You remember that?" "I remember everything." The words came out sharper than I intended, more honest. He turned fully to face me. "Julian, don't. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain." I stood, putting the desk between us like a barricade. "You made a choice. You chose a career over a relationship. It's not complicated." "It is, though. It's so much more complicated than that. Than uncomplicated for me. I felt something dangerous rising in my chest, something that felt like anger but burned hotter. Make me understand how someone who claimed to love me, who proposed to me, could send a fucking text message instead of showing up. I was terrified. Of what? Of me? Of marriage? Of being happy? Of not being enough. The words exploded out of him. Of waking up 5 years later and seeing you realize you'd married someone ordinary, someone who peaked at 30 and spent the rest of his life in middle management, taking you to the same restaurants, the same vacation spots, the same life year after year until you couldn't stand to look at me anymore. It's what happened to my parents. His shadow was now shaking. My dad was supposed to be somebody, had big dreams, big plans, met my mom, got married, had me, and then nothing. He worked at the same insurance company for 30 years, came home every night and drank in front of the TV. And my mom, God, the way she looked at him, like he'd betrayed her just by being ordinary. I'm not your mother. I know that, but I couldn't risk it. The VP position was supposed to make me worthy of you, supposed to prove I was someone who could give you the life you deserved. I didn't want a life. I slammed my hand on the desk. I wanted you, the ordinary, imperfect, real you, not some aspirational version you thought you needed to become. By the time I realized it, it was too late. No, I shook my head. You realized it standing in that airport. You realized it when you sent that text message. You just decided your fear was more important than my heart. He flinched like I'd struck him. You're right, he whispered. You're absolutely right. The rain was coming down harder now. Thunder rumbled somewhere in the distance. Ethan was still standing there, looking like every word was cutting him open. And I was so tired. Tired of being angry, tired of being cold, tired of pretending that having him here, in my space, breathing my air didn't make my chest ache with something that felt dangerously close to longing. You should go home, I said, but my voice had lost its edge. I don't want to. Ethan, please, he took another step closer. Just let me say this. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I burned that bridge so thoroughly there's not even ashes left, but I need you to know that leaving you was the worst mistake of my life. Not because of where I ended up, not because the job didn't work out, but because I lost you.
He was close now. Too close. I could smell his cologne. Different from what he used to wear, but somehow still him. Every success felt empty, he continued, his voice raw. Every promotion, every deal, every moment that was supposed to prove I was worth something, none of it mattered. Because you weren't there. And I put you through hell trying to chase something that was never going to fill the hole I'd carved into my own life. Stop! My voice came out hoarse. I can't. I've been silent for 5 years. I need you to know. I said stop. But he didn't. He reached out, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal, and placed his hand on my shoulder. I should have pulled away. I didn't. His touch was warm, familiar. It sent a shock through my system that had nothing to do with the storm outside and everything to do with muscle memory. With 1,000 times he'd touched me just like this. Grounding, comforting, home. I don't expect anything from you, he said softly. I don't expect forgiveness or a second chance or even friendship. I just need you to know that you deserved better. You deserved someone who showed up, who chose you, who wasn't too broken and scared to see what he had. I could feel his breath, could count his heartbeats through his palm on my shoulder, could remember what it felt like to kiss him. The thought crashed through my carefully constructed walls like a wrecking ball. I looked up, met his eyes, and saw everything I'd been trying to ignore for 3 months reflected back at me. The regret, the longing, the desperate aching hope that maybe, there was still something salvageable in the wreckage we'd made. He leaned in, just slightly, just enough, asking a question with the tilt of his head, the softness in his eyes. Can I? For one heartbeat, I almost said yes. Almost let myself fall back into the gravity of him. Almost forgot that this was the same man who'd shattered me. Almost. I stepped back, His hand fell away. "Go home, Ethan." The hope in his eyes flickered, dimmed. "Okay," he said quietly. He turned toward the door, paused with his hand on the handle. "For what it's worth," he said without looking back, "I knew you would become everything I knew you would. And I'm proud of you, even if I don't have the right to be." Then he was gone. I stood there alone in my office, listening to the rain, feeling the ghost of his touch on my shoulder. And for the first time in 5 years, I let myself cry. Not for the deal that fell through, not for the company we'd lose, but for the man I used to be. The one who believed in forever. The one who stood at an altar covered in gardenias and thought he'd found his person. That man was gone. And I didn't know if I wanted him back. But God, I missed him. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. I meant what I said. All of it. "I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. "I know." I didn't send anything else. Didn't say I forgave him. Didn't say I wanted him to leave. Didn't say that his touch had set something on fire inside me that I'd thought was long dead. I just sat there, watching the storm, wondering if some things were too broken to fix, or if I just didn't know how to let go. 6 months. That's how long Ethan had been working for me when the promotion opportunity came up. Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, a role that would put him on the executive team, give him real power, real visibility, the kind of position that could rebuild a shattered career. Or I could give it to literally anyone else. The choice was mine. Ethan had changed in those 6 months. Not in obvious ways. He still worked himself to exhaustion, still arrived before everyone else and left after, still carried that haunted look in his eyes whenever no one was watching. But there was something different, too. He'd stopped apologizing. Not because he wasn't sorry. I could see the regret in every careful word, every deferential gesture, every moment he held himself back from saying what he really meant. But he'd stopped wielding his guilt like a shield. Instead, he just worked. He saved 3 companies from bankruptcy, negotiated partnerships that increased our portfolio value by 40%, built relationships with founders that made them specifically request him for their advisory boards. My COO wanted to give him the VP role immediately. My board thought he was a strategic asset. Even Marcus, who'd once suggested he could arrange an accident for Ethan, grudgingly admitted the man knew what he was doing. "So what's the problem?" Marcus asked over drinks one evening. "Give him the promotion. He's earned it." "Has he?" "Unless there's something I'm missing." Marcus studied me over his whiskey. "Is there something I'm missing?" I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know anymore. I'd hired Ethan for revenge, to watch him squirm, to make him feel a fraction of the pain he'd caused me. Mission accomplished. But somewhere along the way, the revenge had started to taste like ashes. I called him into my office on a Friday evening. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. It had been a Friday evening when I'd sent the offer letter, a Friday evening when he'd walked into that first interview and our carefully separated lives had collided. He knocked twice, entered at my gesture. "Sit," I said. He sat. I had the documents ready, 2 folders on my desk, red and blue, like a choice in a video game. Red, termination papers, a generous severance package, references that would help him land somewhere else, a clean ending. Blue, the promotion, VP title, corner office, equity stake, everything he'd ever wanted. I hadn't decided which one to give him. "You've been here 6 months," I said. "Yes, sir." Sir. He'd never stopped calling me that, even in the quiet moments, the late nights working on presentations, the shared takeout dinners when we'd both been too busy to leave, the few times we'd accidentally brushed hands reaching for the same document, he maintained that professional distance, like he was afraid that familiarity would shatter whatever fragile truce we'd built. "Your performance has been exceptional. The board is impressed. Our portfolio companies request you specifically. You've exceeded every metric we set." "Thank you." "A VP position is opened up. Strategic partnerships. You're the obvious choice." Something flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or fear that this was another test. "I appreciate that," he said carefully. "Do you want it?" Yes, of course." "Why?"
The question seemed to catch him off guard. Because it's an opportunity to do meaningful work, to help companies grow, to... That's the professional answer. I want the real one. He was silent for a long moment. Because I want to prove I'm not the person who ran away, he said finally, quietly. I want to prove to you, to myself, that I can finish what I start, that I can be someone you don't regret giving a chance to. Is that all? No. He met my eyes. I want to stay because leaving you again would kill me. The honesty of it hit like a physical blow. I stood, walked to the window. The city sprawled beneath us, all light and ambition and endless possibility. Do you remember what you said in that text message? You said I'd understand. I remember. But I didn't, though, understand. I spent 5 years trying to understand how someone could do that, how you could just walk away from everything we'd built. Julian. I'm not finished. My voice was steady, cold. You were right earlier about being afraid, about your parents, about thinking you weren't enough. But here's what you didn't understand, Ethan. I never needed you to be extraordinary. I needed you to be there. He flinched. I would have been happy in a tiny apartment, would have been happy with ordinary date nights and quiet Sundays and a life that looked nothing like success by anyone else's standards. Because I had you, and that was enough.
I know that now, but you didn't know it then, and that's the problem. I moved closer. You looked at me, at us, and saw a liability, something holding you back, so you cut me loose. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I was standing right in front of him now. Explain it to me. Make me understand why I should give you this promotion, why I should give you anything except a one-way ticket out of my life. He stood. We were inches apart now. Because I'm not asking you to forget what I did, he said, voice shaking. I'm not asking you to forgive me, or trust me, or even like me. I'm asking you for a chance to prove that the worst decision I ever made doesn't have to define the rest of my life. Why should I care about the rest of your life? You shouldn't. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. You have every right to destroy me, to take everything I've built here and burn it to the ground. And if that's what you need, if that's what will finally balance the scales, then do it. I'll accept it. I'll walk away and you'll never hear from me again. And if I don't want you to walk away? The question hung between us like smoke. Ethan went very still. What do you want? He whispered. That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? I'd spent 6 months telling myself I wanted revenge, wanted him to suffer, wanted him to feel every ounce of pain he'd caused me. But standing here close enough to count his heartbeats, I realized something. I'd already gotten my revenge. He'd spent 6 months watching me succeed, watching me thrive without him, seeing exactly what he'd thrown away. And it hadn't fixed anything. I was still angry. Still hurt, still carrying the weight of a wedding that never happened and vows that were never spoken. But I was also tired. Tired of holding on to rage like a lifeline. Tired of building walls so high I couldn't see over them anymore. Tired of pretending that having Ethan in my orbit didn't make me feel more alive than I'd felt in years. I took a breath. I want you to know what it felt like. Standing at that altar, watching everyone realize you weren't coming. Reading that text message and feeling my entire world collapse. You do know. No. You imagine it. There's a difference. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. Do you know what this is? He shook his head. The vows I wrote. For our wedding. I held it out. I never read them. Never showed them to anyone. I kept them in my desk for 5 years like some kind of pathetic shrine to what we could have been. His hand trembled as he took the paper. Read it, I said. Ethan, I can't. Read it. He unfolded it with shaking hands. I watched his eyes move across the words I'd written when I still believed in forever. Ethan, I promise to love you on the hard days and the easy ones, to choose you every morning and mean it every night, to build a life with you that's messy and imperfect and so completely ours that no one else could possibly understand it. I promise to be your safe place, your home, your constant. I promise to show up. Always. No matter what. His breath hitched. A tear slid down his cheek. "That's what you took from me," I said quietly. "Not just a wedding, not just a relationship. You took my ability to trust that promise from anyone, including myself." "I'm sorry. God, Julian, I'm so sorry." "I know you are, and I'm tired of making you pay for it." He looked up, eyes red and streaming. I reached for the blue folder. "This is your offer," I said, handing it to him. "VP of Strategic Partnerships, effective immediately. You've earned it." He stared at the folder like it might bite him. "But there are conditions." "Okay." "You report directly to me. You clear every major decision through me first. And if you ever, and I mean ever, run away from something difficult again, I will personally ensure you never work in this industry again." "Understood. I'm not done." I took a step closer. "I'm also not promising you forgiveness, or a relationship, or anything except a professional partnership based on mutual respect." "I understand." "But," I cut him off, "if you want more than that, if you want a chance to prove you're not the man who left me at that altar, you're going to have to earn it. Day by day, choice by choice, starting from zero." Something like hope bloomed in his eyes. "How long?" he asked hoarsely. "As long as it takes." "I can do that." His voice was fierce, determined. "I can do that, Julian. I swear to you." "Don't swear." I held up a hand. "Just show up. Every day. That's all I need." He nodded, clutched the folder to his chest. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me a chance I don't deserve. Thank you for staying long enough to earn it." He turned to leave, got as far as the door before I spoke again. "Ethan." He looked back. "The office, the corner office that comes with the VP title?" "Yes." "It has a view of the garden where we were supposed to get married." His face went pale. "I know," I said. "I chose it specifically. So every day you'll remember what you walked away from, and every day you'll have to choose whether to walk towards something better." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised me. He smiled. Not a big smile, not a happy one, but a smile that understood, that accepted the terms, that said, "I deserve this and I'll take it, and I'll prove myself anyway." "I'll see you Monday," he said. 7 a.m. Don't be late." "I won't." The door closed behind him. I stood alone in my office holding the vows I'd written a lifetime ago. Then I walked to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and filed them away. Not in the trash, not forgotten, just set aside. For now. 3 months later. Ethan knocked on my office door at 6:59 a.m. on a Tuesday. "Come in," I called. He entered with 2 cups of coffee, black, 2 sugars for me, the good kind, from the roaster in Seattle. "Morning meeting prep," he said, setting one on my desk. "I have the Q4 projections ready, and I think you'll want to see the partnership proposal from Axiom before—" "Sit down." He sat. I studied him. He looked healthier than he had in months. The dark circles had faded. His shoulders weren't quite so tense. He looked like someone who was learning to breathe again. "You've been here 9 months," I said. "Yes?" "You haven't missed a single day, haven't been late once, haven't complained even when I've given you the impossible assignments. Are you firing me?" A hint of humor in his voice. New, fragile, but there. "No." I paused. "I'm asking you to dinner." He went very still. As 2 people who used to know each other, who are learning to know each other again." I met his eyes. No promises, no expectations, just dinner. "Okay," he said softly. "I'd like that." Friday, 7 p.m. "And Ethan?" "Yes?" "If you stand me up, I will end you professionally and personally." He laughed, actually laughed. "Noted." He stood to leave, paused. "Julian?" "Yes?" "Thank you for showing up. Every day. Even when I didn't deserve it." I didn't respond. Just watched him leave. And for the first time in 6 years, I let myself imagine a different ending. Not the one where he left me at the altar. Not the one where I destroyed him out of spite. But one where 2 broken people learned to be whole again. Together.
starting from zero, one choice at a time.
The end.